Hello and welcome to Calm Prep Sunday. So today what we're going to be talking about is touching your dog and getting them to like it, especially in situations where maybe they don't, or it's an emergency situation, we need to grab them. Also, we're going to do some things called consent tests, and we'll also explaining why some dogs maybe don't like being touched. So yeah, let's dive in. Calm Prep Sunday. Sunday. Perfect. Full disclosure, your dog does not like being touched and they are biting. Even if just air snapping, muzzle train them. All right. Down below, I'm going to put some links of some really great resources for muzzle training. So do not just all of a sudden have your kids start touching your dog and just feeding them treats. Okay. Please. If you have a dog who is previously fearful of being touched, please muzzle train them. It is not to degrade the dog or make the dog look evil or anything like that. It is just a safety precaution, just like you walk your dog with a leash, okay? So full disclosure, do not touch your dog if it doesn't like it. Consult with a trainer, but this is for dogs who are kind of maybe unsure or neutral, and building from there, okay? So why dogs maybe don't like being touched? One, genetics. They are genetically programmed to maybe fear strangers. And that's not saying that all dogs don't like being touched because they are afraid of people, but this could be a very big component. And it's just an evolutionary pre-programmed thought in their brain, and that's okay. Just think about it as yourself, right? You don't always have to like being touched by people. Another reason why dogs maybe don't like being touched is maybe because they've had a previous bad experience. And so the approach and reaching of hands is scary. Another reason why dogs maybe don't like being touched is because during a really crucial point in their life, it's called the socialization period. It's from 3 months to about 12-ish to 14 months old. It's a really important time that dogs are heavily exposed to new, novel stimulus. The socialization period is where your dog is learning a lot of association to things. It becomes just unrelevant information, or maybe it becomes really great information, or it becomes really scary information. And we want to make sure that the dog's always having really good experiences to many novel things during this socialization period. So when you put an adult dog into that situation and doesn't have the padding from their socialization period, they could perceive being touched and grabbed to be scary. Or maybe during their socialization period, it was scary, right? A previous negative experience. So these are really, really important. So we have the genetic component, right? The evolutionary component, it's pre-programmed. So we have that. They have a negative association to being touched, grabbed, and handled. Then we have dogs who weren't exposed to it during their socialization period, and a puppy not being padded with that type of exposure. And then we have a last thing that I want to mention. This is not for all dogs, but maybe a dog who previously liked being touched and no longer liked being touched. So a dog who genetically is okay with being touched, a dog who has had no previous negative experiences to being touched, or had lots of padding as a puppy to being touched. Now we have a dog who is not comfortable being touched all of a sudden. We want to maybe explore getting a vet check because that dog could be in pain. So now getting touched equals it hurts. And this is really, really important if you have a dog who previously enjoyed being touched and no longer does. And that's something to explore with your vet. Is this dog in pain? Perfect. So now we know why dogs maybe don't like being touched. So can we, what it's called is counter condition. So maybe a dog is neutral about being touched, or it's a puppy or something like that, we're building their padding, fine, but maybe it's also scared. So we are going to counter condition handling, grabbing, touching, and all that kind of stuff. And I talked about last week in our segment about treats, right? And how we can offset condition. So open bar, closed bar technique. So we start doing the scary thing, the touching, the handling. We open the bar, feed, 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 and then scary thing goes away, treats go away. And over time, we are going to develop a dog's emotional response to being positive, something that they are excited excited about. They're like, oh my God, please touch me, please brush me, please clip my nails, because that predicts really great things. We have consent tests. This is a number one I do with all dogs. Even if a dog really, really likes me, I always like to do a consent test, because eventually they maybe just don't like it, right? And I never want to take a dog who previously likes being touched and making it a negative experience, right? So I go in, I start touching a dog who previously likes to be touched, and I'll move away. And do they come towards me for more? So we call this electing with their feet, okay? And if I pull away and she comes towards me, that means she wants more. And so then I pet her more. Now, if the dog stayed in the same spot or moved away, I would no longer pet them, okay? And she learns this game is, oh, if I move towards hands, I get the pets. The pets are the reinforcing thing that I really like. I'm not even using treats, because this is a dog who does like pets. Okay, so that's how you do a consent test, right? Is the dog participating in the pets? That's a big thing. I don't even think of it as consent. Are they participating? Are they involved, right? And do they have a choice to leave? So getting your dog to enjoy liking pets. There's two ways I like to do this. And there's one way with an active hand and one way with a passive hand. So I make sure I have that parameter in my training plan depending on the dog. If the dog is super scared and nervous, I'll probably elect to use a passive hand, where it's a hand that's reached out or something like that, and it doesn't move. Passive hand means, don't worry, the game's not going to change. This is the hand that's been dealt. It won't change, it won't morph, it won't get scarier as you approach it. It's just going to be this, a mundane hand that doesn't move. All right, so if our hand's just going to be stagnant and not moving, and the dog has to orient around it to produce the snacks, all right? And then I have an active hand that's kind of maybe enticing or reaching into them. So with Peanut, I'm going to do a gentle head scrub, and then I'm going to start feeding. And making sure you do the scary thing before you do any reaching. But if you go and grab your treat pouch, put it on, and then start doing reps, right, then what's happening is grabbing a treat pouch is now a predictor of touching. Right now we have backwards conditioning, where we just did the great thing before the scary thing. So it's really important that when you're doing reaches for your treat pouch and maybe putting the treat pouch on, it happens after. And it's really important when we're doing a conditioning training plan. It needs to be varied throughout the day. It needs to not have a repetition, a pattern. If your dog is kind of neutral and not kind of hanging out, moving away from them can sometimes invite them in. And just doing fun things like scratching on the ground, and if they come towards, oh perfect, and snap them, right? I'm going to do the same thing with Brooke. And you can see she did a small little lip lick. She wasn't too keen on that. She thought that was kind of weird. She kind of looked up at my hand. She's like, ooh, that's a weird hand. And you see, did it again. Wasn't very keen on it. She pulled her ears back. She was like, that's kind of a scary hand. Now, she is more on the neutral side. She's not growling or baring her teeth or something like that, right? But she definitely isn't 100% keen on it. And she hasn't moved towards me. You notice on Peanut, when I did 2 strokes with my hand, she moved toward me. She's like, this is a fun game. So I'm going to do it again. Oh, no lip lick, but there was some head avoiding. All right? Yeah. And Brooke is a dog who very much likes people. So I know I don't have an element of not liking people. Less of a head bow there. There was no lip lick. And she didn't look up at my hand and go, ooh, hey, oh, right? Not bad. Not bad, Brooke. Yeah. I don't know if you guys can see it. Brooke's facial expressions are pretty subtle. And it'll be harder if you have a dog who has a lot of fur and stuff like that. But I'm going to put in the links below some resources for understanding when a dog is showing facial distress. So on the next topic, I talked about how petting can translate to restraints and stuff like that for vets, vet visits and nail clipping and things like that. When I talk about it in my online course, I talk about being force-free. It doesn't mean you can't grab and touch your dog, but we want to make sure our dog really likes it. I'm gonna just do a general paw restraint, and I'm actually gonna start at her shoulder. So I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna grab her shoulder. And when I do it, I'm doing it pretty aggressively. And I'm totally on opposite sides with my treat pouch, so I'm just gonna move it over. And I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna grab her elbow, and then I'm gonna feed. But you're gonna have to start getting your dog to like being grabbed and touched and examined and restrained. And it's the same way as the petting, right? And especially with this one, right? We're doing an active hand. The hands are coming in and reaching. Come in and grabbing her, and that predicts the snacks. When I come in and grab her, nothing else predicts the snacks except when I touch her. It's really important. Another thing I want to talk about is in emergencies, when you need to grab your dog or pick them up, especially a small dog. I believe in picking up your small dog in an emergency. You got to make sure your dog really likes it, especially sometimes when you're picking up an emergency is because, you know, something scary is happening around you, right? I've been working on this with Peanut a lot, but can I come in and grab her harness and she like it? And then can I grab her and pull her around and have her like it, right? And sometimes maybe say there's a squabble at the park and I need to grab her and I need to pull her and get her going, right? Does she like it? I know. Now, this isn't for all dogs. If your dog really doesn't like being pet, please do not do this. You're going to have to build up, you know, just with a hand coming out from your side. Start with just my hand coming out and reaching, and then making it more intense where I'm actually coming and grabbing and being really, really intense with it, and then I get into the pulling, okay? So anytime we're building a plan, it's very incremental, starting at the least, you know, intense version of the thing to the most intense, and then the most intense in the environment that it actually is happening, so in real life situations. So that's kind of all of it. So we have consent tests, so we're going in, we're touching, we're taking away, and seeing if the dog elects with their feet to come back towards us. Then we have enjoying getting pets. Then we have enjoy being restrained. And then emergency grabs. Then we have our dogs, whether they're interacting with just you, with a vet, with a friend, with a child, and all of that kind of stuff. And those kind of layers are really, really intense. And making sure that whether we have a puppy that is in the socialization period or we have an adult dog with a previous negative experience or has genetically predisposed stranger danger, they are treated very differently. And understanding where your dog lays in that continuum to ensure that you're providing them the best training plan. If you guys are looking to get a dog who is fearful and showing threat signals like baring their teeth, whale eye, and lip licking, avoiding, tensing, pulling their ears back, growling, or biting, I want you to seek a professional. So if you're unsure if this falls into your category, you can book a virtual consult with me, and we can kind of hatch out kind of where your dog is on the spectrum of fearful and setting you guys up with a professional that can help you. So I just want to thank you guys for tuning in to Kong Prep Sunday. This was a bit of a heavy topic. Maybe I'll jazz it up next week. If you guys are able to, or if you know anyone that can, you know, benefit from this, please share this video, and also hit subscribe because that will help me a lot as well. And thank you so much for tuning in to Kong Prep Sunday. We post a video every Sunday, so while you're prepping your Kongs, you have some great content to watch while you're doing that.